Testing. All right. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that. Camera's working. We're live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. Why does YouTube have a question mark on it? X, Instagram. I think we're good to go. I think we are good to go. Let me get my comments up here. Actually, check out that YouTube link for us, if you don't mind. It's showing up as a question mark here, but it does have a green check mark saying we're live. So whatever, let's get at it. Welcome, everybody. January 21, 2025, episode 322. Welcome to Mornings with Scott, the best damn business show for medium and small businesses on the planet. Markets are looking good this morning. I didn't check them the last half hour, but it seems that there is excitement with the Trump inauguration yesterday, and markets are up. Bitcoin was up. It's been up and down. I think it hit a high of 109,000 at some point last night. I think it was 104 when I checked in this morning. But everybody in general, the markets are up and everybody seems excited. Did you watch the inauguration? I had it on in the background as I was working yesterday. Sound is good on LinkedIn. Thanks, Ash. Check YouTube for us as well, and thanks for joining us on LinkedIn. And so I had the inauguration on in the background while I was working yesterday, so I missed a lot of it, or I wasn't paying attention. But some of it I watched. It was fantastic. What a show! Did you see this? This Reverend Lorenzo Sewell, Sewell, from Detroit, a 43-year-old, a young fellow compared to me, maybe not compared to you, but a guy from Reverend from Detroit, and he was just fantastic. Just fantastic. He was the guy that brought, he's a black reverend, and he brought the Trump into a black church in Detroit and supported the campaign. And oh my goodness, listening to him just gave me chills. I love what a skill and a talent to. It's almost performance art, that type of preaching, I find, and it's certainly good for the soul. I don't know what that is. I don't have a lot of experience in it, but I do like it a lot. And speaking of skill and talent, what blows me away is the ability of the Trump campaign, not just for inauguration, but throughout the entire campaign with all of these rallies and events, the sheer competence of putting on these massive shows seemingly without a hitch ever. Is really kind of amazing, and this ability to put on events, to be the host of your own event, is such an important skill set for a business. To be the center of attention, it's really amazing. I've been pushing my company in that direction probably 7-8 years now. We host our own events, our own parties. I don't spend a lot of time going to conferences and other people's cocktail parties. It's just not the same bang for the buck. And we put on 2 weeks ago, I did not do a show. You may remember last week I didn't do a show. I was sick. And the year before that, I didn't do a show. It was a celebration of life that I hosted and organized for my father in Toronto at the National Club downtown on Bay Street, a beautiful event. And the organization was seamless. We seemed to be in a routine on how to organize things. My staff is fantastic at this, and it really went off without a hitch. We've organized speaker events for me in the past, and so instead of me, I'm available for public speaking events for a fee and keynotes, and to participate in panels. And I'm doing one in February, I think, for lenders in Calgary. But the biggest bang for the buck for me as a professional, for the business, is to host our own event. And it's you don't make money hosting events, but you can provide a lot more value and build your network in that way. And so this capability is so important for business, and it builds. If you're the host of an event, whatever that may be, not only does it speak to your confidence, but it creates a bond, a feeling of connectivity with everybody that attends your event. It's such a skill and such a valuable tool. Be the host. Be the host of your own event if you can. Do it virtually. You want to be a member of a community? Start your own community rather than joining somebody else's and see how that works for you. Have you heard of the first day CEO move? Have you ever heard of that? I'm a little bit laughing at myself because I thought to myself when I was looking at the inauguration and all of the executive orders coming through for Trump, I said, this is a good opportunity, Scott, to talk about the first day CEO move, which is a Scott Adams podcast concept. Well, Scott Adams concept that I learned about on his podcast. And his podcast, if you don't know, is daily, every day, 8 a.m. That is when he does his podcast. And so I prepare for this show starting around 5 a.m., 5:30 a.m. My time. So I got all my notes down. And then as I'm getting dressed or doing whatever, to doing the tech to make sure this show can go off and that we can be live everywhere, even though there's a question mark on YouTube. And so I have my headphones in listening. I listen to economics, financial markets research show in the morning. I listen to the Scott Adams podcast that starts at 8 a.m. Now it goes for an hour and a half. So I have to bail on his podcast so that I can join my own podcast and give you this content. And of course, what does he talk about immediately is the first day CEO move. So I'm replicating the content. It is his idea, but I wrote mine first, as far as I know. Anyway, so the first day CEO move, we can all learn this for our business, is refers to the actions taken by the CEO when you first show up for leadership in the company. And the ideas is to have visible victories immediately. The new CEO aims to create immediate noticeable wins to establish their leadership. Noticeable wins are part of building winning momentum. Momentum comes from success. It comes from winning, and you want to do things that are noticeable. And as I've told you in my content and the business courses, you can find a link for that in the notes. You can create visible wins by, hiring sanitation and cleaning the floor, doing a fresh coat of paint, changing the light bulbs, making things bright. But you do things immediately to create noticeable wins. You take quick action. Strategy involves making rapid, often dramatic changes or decisions within the first day or earlier of taking office. Did you notice that we all forgot that Biden was president from mid-November until yesterday? There was a transfer of power, a peaceful transfer of power yesterday, which sort of reminded us that Trump didn't have power, but it seemed like he did right from the election. He made so much news. He did so much negotiation. The hostages released from Hamas, for example, not all of them, but some of them. There's a power sharing there or a success sharing between the Trump administration and Biden administration. That's all cool. What's important is the end goal, not the allocating success and rewards. But even before he showed up, he was taking actions, and we all forgot about Biden. That's part of the first day CEO move. Symbolic gestures would be part of it. These actions may include substantive policy changes and symbolic moves that signal a shift in direction. One of the things I do when I show up in a troubled company, apart from the complete usefulness of going on what I call a listening tour, where I'll sit down and listen to employees and say, hey, just you and me, what's gone wrong with this company? What needs to change for this company, this business to be a success? And they will tell you, but there's also a huge symbolism associated with that I'm there to listen. I'm not there to be some sort of guru, that there is a team solution to what we're trying to accomplish here and get us out of the trouble that we're in. And that's all very important. And it allows you in the first day CEO move, one of your goals is just to set the agenda. This is what leadership is. These are our priorities. Here's what's going to be different. So, well, as I said, we all forgot Biden was president. And then Trump yesterday, immediately after inauguration, signs off on some untold number of executive orders. Some reports say up to 100, some reports say up to 200. There was so much going on, so much action that nobody really knows how many executive orders were signed. But here's a partial list. Let's go through some of these. Day one, all of this was done. Declared a national emergency at the U.S.-Mexico border. Why is there a national emergency at the U.S.-Mexico border? Well, if he declares that, it gives him a lot more power. Specifically, he can use the military to move in and start building the wall and providing whatever protections are needed if he's going to battle against the cartels, which somewhere else in another executive order, he declared the cartels terrorists or international combatants or something. He put them into a new designation so that he can fight against them in the human smuggling that goes on the southern border. It also gives him access to federal funds. So there was a declaration of national emergency on the border. He deployed troops to assist in immigration enforcement. He reinstated the Remain in Mexico policy. He terminated asylum and refugee admissions, attempted to end birthright. Well, this is somebody wrote this, attempted to end birthright citizenship. I think he issued an order to end birthright citizenship, and that will, of course, be litigated. And we see where that goes. He ended the CBP One app for migrant entry, and this just was an app set up to facilitate illegal immigration, if we can go back to using that word, into the U.S. Just self-declare on this app, and you'll be good. So those were some of the executive orders related to immigration. He declared a national emergency on energy, a national energy emergency as well. Why would he do that? Well, the U.S. consumes roughly 21 million barrels a day of oil, and it produces about 13 million barrels a day of oil. And that shortfall causes the U.S. obviously to have to fill that in from somewhere, and it fills it in from all sorts of international markets. And the lack of supply leads to inflation and reliance on these, in some cases, foreign parties that are bad actors and do not have the U.S. interests at heart. And so now the counter argument to that, of course, would be that oil markets are a global market, and just because there's a shortfall in one place doesn't mean there's really a supply shortage. But the bottom line is inflation has been driven, there is no doubt, by increased energy prices, and increased energy prices have been driven by reduced supply, regulation, and transportation hangups, i.e. pipelines. And so he's declared a national emergency with respect to energy. What powers does that give him? Well, it gives him a whole bunch more powers to focus on expedited permitting, so he can get around approvals and accelerate those regulations for approvals and accelerate those approvals for energy infrastructure projects like pipelines. Increase domestic production, regulatory changes. He can freeze federal regulations, potentially waive certain environmental regulations, not the ones that are good. I mean, he could, but you don't want to waive regulation that's designed to protect the environment and clean up and all that sort of stuff. You want to get rid of the regulation that was introduced for no other reason but to crater the industry, right? And that's always been the trick of the Democratic Party and the liberals. Everybody on the left, basically, they don't stand up and say, "Hey, we support fracking in Pennsylvania. We don't support fracking in Pennsylvania. Let's get rid of fracking." What they do is they say, like Kamala Harris did, "We support fracking, but over here we quietly did 1,000 regulations which make it impossible to frack. It makes it impossible to get the financing for fracking. It makes it economically unviable." And what do? You kill fracking. You kill coal. And whether you believe you should have fracking or coal is a different matter, but it is the regulation. It's not the honesty. It's not the, "Hey, we don't support this for the following reasons. Vote for us." It's yeah, we all support you, and then secretly we're just going to stab you in the back. So the national emergency on energy gives him powers to get rid of some of that stuff. He can expand drilling, open up new areas for resource extractions. and participation in the Paris Climate Agreement. Does that even exist? I didn't know that was still a thing. Prioritize oil, gas, and coal production under the drill baby drill policy, and EV mandates. So this whole national emergency gives him a bunch of extra powers to move forward as quickly as possible. And under this first day CEO move, really provides, it sets the agenda. It sets the leadership, tells everybody in the country, the stakeholders, the employees, what priorities are. Yeah, we already covered that. What else did he do on the first day? Ended all on the area of cultural and social policies. He ended all DEI programs in the federal government. So he made that against the rules. DEI is against the rules in the federal government. What will that do to DEI in corporate America? If you're running Boeing or Costco, but Boeing in particular, where you've had all of these, all of the DEI promotion and social justice promotion in the company, and then you ran into safety problems and quality problems, you've abandoned astronauts on the International Space Station. And I'm not saying, and I don't think anybody's saying, is that is a direct one-for-one tie to DEI programs, but it is a fact that when you have competing priorities, and one of those priorities is measurable, like DEI, and one of those priorities is not immediately measurable, like quality and safety. Those are measurable in the longer term, but not in the short term. If I promote this fellow versus that woman, then that's immediately measurable, and the impact on quality and safety is not immediately measurable, while it's the DEI that's going to win it. So on this measurable, that is going to win, and that's what's going on in those companies. We talked about that a lot on this show before. But can corporate America withstand, if you're sitting on a board of directors and you see that the federal government has banned DEI, can you keep it going? Maybe you can. I don't know. That will be interesting to watch. Executive order that the federal government will recognize only two sexes, male and female. Federal funding for general transition services is now prohibited. Mandated segregation of federal facilities based on biological sex. So if you are arrested, dudes watching this, and you want to go to a women's prison and enjoy yourself for the next 10 years, and you just want to identify as transitioning to get yourself there, well, that's not going to work in the US anymore. But I think if you do your crime in Canada, you're probably still good on that front. He pardoned 1,500 individuals connected to the January 6th Capitol protests / riots / insurrection. 1,500, which is basically all of them, pardoned, gone from this whole sham situation in the community. So yesterday, before inauguration, Biden pardoned everybody that was on the sham J6 committee, including Liz Cheney, Adam Schiff. So all of those people were pardoned, and then Trump gets in and he pardons the other side. The 1,500 people that were jailed and charged and have criminal records for protesting their election. And so what a mess. But I don't think, there's going to be some nuance on this that people aren't going to be happy was missed. Like, oh, well, this person did nothing, but this person actually had a violent attack and shouldn't be pardoned. But you don't know. All of the information is so skewed. It was a made-for-TV riot and a made-for-TV January 6th commission that you don't know what's true. Nobody knows what's true. I think it's good that they pardoned everything. But what was interesting, so we got pardons on both sides from two different presidents, and then you had Vice President Vance yesterday come out and say, well, pardons are not going to be enough. We're going to organize class action suits against the members of the J6 committee, like Liz Cheney and Adam Schiff, and we're going to go after them for the hardship caused to these individuals. Now, is that going to work? I mean, God, I hope so. That would be amazing, but I doubt it. I think you're just protected, right, by congressional whatever. Basically, you can commit whatever sort of crimes you might want to do within the protections and the cloaking of Congress. So you can just say anything. It's any sort of BS, any sort of lies, as Adam Schiff or a Liz Cheney might do, and you're protected from that. So we'll see. One of the best things, if true, that this lawsuit might, if it does go forward, a class action suit against these people personally might go forward, is the disclosure process will bring, one would hope, transparencies, and the pardons will not protect them from the legal fees and whatever judgments come out of that. That'll be interesting. So we'll keep an eye on that. By the way, did you know, a little obscure piece of legal fact, and I think it's a case from the early 1900s in the US, but pardons, you would think, well, the president just says, hey, Ashley, you're pardoned from whatever crimes that you did during this period of time, but that's not the way that works. You have to actually accept the pardon. So there's an accepting piece to this. And then there was case law that said the very act of accepting implies an admission of guilt. And so there's no crime, you would argue, and you're being pardoned as protection. But then the person receiving the pardon accepts it, and by doing so admits that they created a crime. That's what the case law says. I mean, it seems maybe technically true. I don't know that it's really in the minds of the people accepting the pardon an admission of anything, but I thought that was interesting. What else do we have here for first day executive orders? He froze federal hiring except for military roles. As a reminder, the public sector in the U.S. makes up close to, I think it's 57, 58% of the entire U.S. economy. So close to 60% of the entire economy. And that just grew massively under Biden. And so, and it's not direct employees, by the way, it's direct federal employees. It's non-government organizations, the NGOs. It is private sector companies that are supported primarily by government funding to, for whatever reason. And so if you add that all up, it adds up to more than half, close to 60% of the US economy. That's not healthy. All of the job reports under Biden, if you had removed the federal influence of those, would have been negative or at least neutral. And so we'll see how that goes. He froze the implementation of new federal regulations. So this is great. In his first administration, there was some sort of ratio, and it's exactly what I would have done. I would have said, if you want to pass a new regulation, you need to get rid of 7 more, right? So you're always kind of reducing the volume of regulations. The US is a place where really it's impossible to build anything substantial. Think of the implementation of the EV charging stations. What did they build? Like 8 stations for billions and billions and billions of dollars. Sorry about that. Still fighting my cold. Think of the high-speed rail in California, that billions and billions of dollars, and they built, a mile of rail. I'm just making up the numbers, but you get the point. Elon Musk, and he can't launch rockets in various places because of the regulations. Well, Trump put a freeze to regulations, and the goal here, of course, would be to eliminate and make it smart regulation. Nobody is against regulation, as I'm often confused, but if you just bury enough regulations on the regulations that don't even align with each other, they conflict. You're wrong as a CEO, you're wrong if you do this, and you're wrong if you do that. There's no way to win. You may as well not be in business, and that's the situation in many, many instances going on in the U.S. Right now. A bunch of symbolic executive orders. He renamed Denali back to Mount Kinley. I have no idea what that is. Renamed the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. I'm going to choose not to participate in that one. He ordered flags to fly at full height on inauguration days. Yeah, I mean, fine. I mean, the controversy here is that the flags are at half mast for President Carter's passing. And then I think they're supposed to be halfway up for 30 days. But the inauguration, which of course calls for full height flying of the flags, comes during that 30-day period. So there's a bit of a conflict there. So I don't know if this is very exciting, but it's just bang, setting the priorities, right? The first day CEO move. Economic policy, sign a memorandum directing agencies to combat inflation. I don't know how they're going to do that. Delayed a TikTok ban for 75 days. We talked about that yesterday. announced 25% tariffs on Canada. Okay, that was an announcement. It wasn't actually an executive order. And we're going to get to the Canadian tariffs next year. Ordered the release of the remaining JFK, RFK, and MLK assassination records. Day one on transparency. Do you think, let's talk about JFK. Let's say the CIA ordered the hit on JFK or conducted the assassination of JFK. Certainly that's what RFK Jr. thinks. He's told us that during the campaign many times, and he wants to release the rest of these files. Do you think if the government did the crime, that the government then wrote down in a file that, like, hey, I did the crime, don't release that, please? I wrote it down. It's right here. Here's the file that says I did the assassination, but just don't release that ever. I don't want that getting out. Do you think that's what happened? Or do you think there's nothing in these files? I mean, if you're willing to do the assassination, are you willing to not write it down and break whatever record keeping rules there are to go along with that? I'm not expecting anything out of these assassination records, but we'll see. It'll be interesting. All it's going to do is raise more questions and continue the controversy for the rest of our natural lives and our children's and so on forever. That, my friends, is the first day CEO move. The very idea that you just come in with this flourish of activity that just mind-boggling. It's hard for people to process, and it sets the agenda. And you say, wow, what leadership. I may not agree with all of it, but I understand the direction we're going. It's clear, it's active. I better get on board or we're going to miss out on this. You know, you in your business can create your own first day CEO move, even if it's not your first day. Well, how do you do that? You call into your employees and you set it up however you want. But the message is, we got to change. Things have to change. I messed up. We messed up. Things aren't going well. Here's the evidence of that. We need to change. And here's what we're going to do. And you could do your first CEO move by just admitting that you've got something that you've got to deal with. And by the way, it doesn't have to be you messing up. It doesn't have to be the team messing up. It could be the world is changing. You could call in your team right now and say, the economic world is changing. We have uncertainty with the Trump administration, with tariffs. Is that going to cause inflation? What is that going to do? Here's what we need to do to combat that. You can create your own first day CEO move all the time. And you should be doing that because people get tired, right? You just get into a routine. You develop your habits. You develop your systems. And you lose your energy. You lose your energy. And I don't mean tired. It's the momentum that you're losing. This is a good way to shake things up. Remember the powerful leadership tool of the first CEO move. Tariffs. I think I took this from the Globe and Mail. U.S. President Donald Trump said his country could impose 25% tariffs on Canadian and Mexican goods as soon as February 1. Hours after the inauguration, he said that. Canadian politicians and business leaders breathed a sigh of relief. We all up here in Canada think it's amazing we haven't been tariffed yet. We bought ourselves another week. Woohoo! Several U.S. media outlets reported Monday that Trump would direct government agencies to remedy persistent trade deficits and ensure trade deals prioritize U.S. jobs. Canada is among the countries the U.S. has a trade deficit with, but he stopped short of imposing the 25% tariffs on day one. He did say later last night that we're thinking in terms of 25% of Mexico and Canada because they're allowing a vast number of people. Canada is very bad abuser. Also, vast numbers of people to come in and fentanyl to come in. He told reporters from the Oval Office. When asked when he would do the tariffs, he says, I think we will do it February 1st. Canadian government reacting to Mr. Trump's Monday night comments warned the United States against proceeding, saying it has prepared a retaliation plan. So we have a retaliation plan. It would be a mistake for the American government to proceed with imposing tariffs, said Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc. I don't think I say Blanc, I just Blanc. In terms of jobs in the United States, the security, he said it's going to increase cost of living in the United States if he does that. So we have a series in Canada of retaliatory measures lined up. And Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly, who I think I quite like and is effective, said this is an important moment for Canadians. We need to continue to fight for our interests, defend jobs across the country. We're calling every single political leader across the board, across the country, to stand united, because now more than ever, we need to make sure we put our country first. Here's the interesting thing. In Canada, for this negotiation, which is what it is, this whole idea that Canada is bringing a bunch of fentanyl into the U.S. I mean, there might be fentanyl going south. I bet you there's way more fentanyl coming north, way more illegal immigration coming north than the other way around. We should both do a better job to secure our borders. That's what neighbors do, right? But this idea that this is an excuse for tariffs is an excuse. It's a negotiation position to get a better deal, to close a deficit in trade, which he believes is a bad thing. And so I'm not saying it is a bad thing. I'm just saying that he believes that. And so what this is going to boil down to in Canada is that we have no federal leadership for this negotiation. The premiers are taking over, and it's going to be a battle between the West, specifically Alberta and Saskatchewan, which has the energy resources predominantly. I'm excluding hydroelectricity from the East, which is also a significant tool in Ontario and Quebec. But Alberta is going to want to give up everything for manufacturing in Ontario because they don't care about Ontario, so that they can continue to pump energy resources south, whereas Ontario, and Quebec, which is the manufacturing hub predominantly of Canada, is going to be arguing that we should be withholding energy so that we don't get crushed in the negotiation on manufacturing. That's what this is going to boil down to. Danielle Smith, Premier of Alberta, she'd been to see Trump. She did a interview on CTV, I think, yesterday. She said that Americans consume about 21 million barrels of oil per day, and they produce about 13 million per day. They have to find the extra somewhere else, and the refineries are special purpose. So the refinery capacity in the U.S. is for heavy grade oil, largely. And where do you buy heavy grade oil? Well, you buy it from Venezuela, Iraq, Iran, or from Canada. Which one do you prefer to buy it from, your ally or your enemies? Obviously, you would rather, if you could, buy it from Canada. Sorry, I'm losing my voice again. So she wants to build infrastructure, more pipelines, more special projects, more refining capacity, and really integrate the energy sectors with the U.S., which she should properly want to do. And she seems bright, and she seems completely correct from her position as the Premier of Alberta to do that. On the other hand, you got Premier Doug Ford in Ontario, who is not an energy powerhouse. We do have a lot of resources in Ontario, certainly up in the nickel belt, whatever we call that now, ring of fire. But Doug Ford, who's been taking the lead for some of these premiers, his concern is manufacturing jobs in Ontario, predominantly the integration of the automotive manufacturing sectors, the parts sectors. That's a big deal. He said in an interview yesterday that tariffs are still coming. They will target Canada. They will target Ontario's manufacturing sector. Quote, make no mistake about it, he's coming for us. Is it tomorrow? Is it a month down the road? I don't know, but he is coming for us. So that's the balance. Trump wants the Americans want a bunch of resources from Canada. That would be electricity in the east and critical minerals and energy from the west, but they want to crush the manufacturing and bring that to America, which will hurt Canadian jobs. And so we have this balance, this national approach that we need to take, and Alberta needs to kick in some of that, at least from the negotiation, to make this whole thing work, so that Canada as a whole not as a specific region, survives these negotiations and prospers. And so that's what we need instead of premiers fighting with each other, which is exactly what is going to happen. So we need federal leadership. Where is it? Where is Poilievre? Where is Poilievre? I mean, this first day CEO move, even before you're elected, even before an election is called, where is he on this? I checked out his X timeline this morning. This is his opportunity to lead, to prove that he's the guy to do the job, to take over from the Liberals, the Conservative Party taking over from the Liberals. Not one post. Not one post on this. Why? Why? Well, probably because if you say, here's what we should do in federal leadership, what you're going to be doing is screwing the West and favoring the East. I mean, that's the only solution. And he doesn't want to do that because he doesn't want to lose his strong powerhouse of votes from the West. It's an election issue that maybe is a third rail that's too hard to touch. Mark Carney, nothing. Not one statement. What's pinned to the top of his X timeline is a segment with Jon Stewart. There's something serious. Not one post about the Canada's response. Chrystia Freeland, another Liberal candidate for leadership. She has hats on there that says "We are not for sale." She did do interviews yesterday, so she's actually trying to put a foot forward on this. I remind you, Chrystia Freeland led the negotiations for the last free trade deal or trade arrangement with the U.S. and Mexico. She's the woman who said, "Hey, Canadians, we won against Trump in the first administration. We won because I know we got less stuff, and it's a worse deal than what we had before that, but I thought we were going to lose more badly, and that's a win. That's a win for you, Canada." And so she says that it's a good thing in an interview that Trump hates her, and that's a positive. And she has it pinned to the top that we're tough. She did an interview and she says, Canadians are tough. It's like when we have the weatherman said it's going to be cold, when we're going to tough that out. Well, that's exactly what Canadians are. So there's a lack of substance there, but at least she's talking about the point. Look at the Canadian value proposition to the U.S., which is what you need to focus on in a negotiation is our resources. That's what they want. And we are shared values for the most part. And so the idea that you could buy and have your biggest customer and biggest supplier be someone that doesn't hate you, that has shared values and our strategic position in the Arctic, the North. There's a reason that the Americans want Greenland. The positioning in the Arctic is key from a global strategic point of view, and Canada provides that to the Americans right now. And so that's our value proposition. As I said, we are their largest customer. We are their largest supplier. But remember, MAGA hates Canadians. That's a Trudeau-driven issue, but it's true. MAGA has zero respect for Canadians. They're going to bully us, and we need somebody that can fight back against that. We need federal leadership. If it's going to be provincial leadership, it needs to be provincial leadership that recognizes that this is a federal issue. Danielle Smith is not doing her job unless she thinks about this from a federal perspective as well, because otherwise it's not going to get done. Alberta's not going to be looked after if it's just screwing the rest of Canada. Think about that, you Alberta residents. We need to have federal leadership, and we also need to diversify. We need to diversify our supply base. We need to diversify our customer base. We need better relationships through this negotiation with China, India, the European Union. We need to eliminate trade barriers amongst our own provinces. All right, I'm way over time. Do I have comments that I need to look at? I do not. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This has been Mornings with Scott, the best damn business show for medium and small businesses on the planet. Remember the first day CEO move. It's super powerful. You've just seen a tremendous example of that. You've seen the absence of an example in Pierre Poilievre, who should be all over this thing, but he is not. He is failing in that regard. We will see you tomorrow. We will see you tomorrow at 8:30 Mountain Time. See you then.